Hey folks, welcome to another work from home episode of LongShorts. And today we have someone we know fairly well. What say, Sharad? We have with us Mr. Yatin Thakur. His company operates the very co-working space where our offices are based. Hey Yatin, great to have you here. How's it going?
Hi Nikhil. Hi Sharad. Thanks for having me over here. It's going good, tough times, just working from home, getting used to this new culture and being a co-working chain. It's not the best thing for us, but what can one do?
No, absolutely.
A lot of these changes, I guess, Yatin, the big question is how many of these changes will be irreversible, something that we'll obviously keep a close eye on as we go down. But incredibly challenging times, but also a lot of room for material changes in lifestyle and cultures and workplace dynamics, I guess, right?
Absolutely. I think this was totally unexpected, unforeseen. No one thought what's going to happen. I think till about 40 days back, we were just hearing that yes, COVID is spreading. But I think shit became real when we got hit in Delhi. And how things changed overnight. You guys have been a part of the co-working family. How all of a sudden the transition happened. I think none of us even realized that what was happening. And how everything all of a sudden moved to the stage. At first we said, okay, let's take a precaution. We saw lesser number of people coming to offices. Then all of a sudden you restricted your movements, using basic services like Ola or Uber, right? Which are pretty essential these days. And now all of a sudden, while we all spoke and while we all could figure out what's happening, a complete lockdown in the country. So I think that's been a bit of a shocker for most of us, and none of us were prepared for it. But let's see. The only thing is we all are in it together. The whole world has been hit. So let's see what's going to happen. But surely life won't be the same. Life will definitely change even once the lockdown opens up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a very unprecedented time, and I think today's conversation can be quite interesting because obviously you kind of heading co-working operations company have kind of a front row seat in terms of how things are moving from the perspective of professional as well as personal lifestyle. Well, another thing that I would like to add is Yatin wears many hats. So he's a serial entrepreneur, and he also is the managing director of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. So in addition to his own business of co-working, would be great to also get some insight on the broader Indian startup ecosystem as well in a post-COVID-19 world. I mean, I'm being optimistic here because I say a post-COVID-19. I hope there will be a post-COVID-19 world, in terms of what,
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It seems like endless. So that's why I stopped looking at all the graphs and the charts because let's see how things go. It's better to look at data on a day-to-day basis rather than view the newest model from I don't know which university or which research group. But no, it's great to have Yatin here. And so Yatin, before we kind of go into COVID-19 and the entire I would say aftermath or impact of it, would be great to get a brief sense of your journey to date, in the sense that trust me, man, I've seen a lot of LinkedIn profiles, but your LinkedIn profile is so long. I mean, you have so many things going on in parallel. So would be great to get some sense of your journey to date and especially your interface with the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, so it is indeed a long profile. I know that. I've tried to trim it quite a bit, but that's the best I could make. So I'll quickly take you guys through my personal journey first, because I think that puts a lot of context on things which I do now and why I do it, and then we can proceed with rest of the questions.
Sure.
So as you guys know, I've been a hardcore entrepreneur. That's all I know in my life. I started my journey as a startup guy, and I chose to remain like that. As we speak, I've entered my 17th year as an entrepreneur. I started my journey when I was 16. Today, I think my experience is more than the age at which I started. It's been it's quite a kind of shocker also for me, because I didn't realize how all these years passed so quickly. But when I started my journey back in 2003, the word entrepreneurship or even the word startup didn't exist so much. Like everyone would say that, oh, I'm a business person, or I'll become a business person, right? Like that was the normal common jargon. And being that enthu kid at that age who was like always looking out for future technologies, who was trying to figure out how the world would look 5 years from that point or 10 years from that point, I ventured into a few things which were unknown or untouched or unexplored. Primarily, these were kind of tech or media ventures like yours, where I felt the way we live our lifestyle would drastically change, and technology will become a part of our daily routine, right? And this is back in 2003. Today, as we speak, everything is so tech focused. How everything is working out, how we all are focusing on generating content, sharing knowledge, figuring out different distribution mediums. So I feel when I was starting it, that was just the starting point for all of these things that we felt content would be key. But what will be this content? No one knew. We knew technology will play a key role in our life. But what kind of technologies, what kind of services will it provide us? What kind of ease will it create? No one envisioned that. And now I think our life, I think the first thing which we do is, even before brushing our teeth, would be to just check our phones and check our emails, right? Which you wouldn't have thought back in those days. So when I started my journey, from that starting point where it was pretty much a lonely journey of a 16-year-old high school kid who was trying to work on different innovative ventures, to where I am today, I figured out there were way too many challenges in a country like India, especially when it came to starting up your own venture, right? First of all, this whole public validation which we are very used to didn't exist in this space, right? Everyone would say, if you would talk to your family or your extended family or family friends, their typical question would be, "अच्छा बेटा क्या कर रहे हो? कहाँ तक पहुँचे? कितनी पढ़ाई की? अच्छा इसका नौकरी कहाँ करोगे?" Right? So that was the starting point, right? And I felt that everyone was very equipped to work in a job environment. So everyone's end goal was that I'll study, I'll do whatever I do, I'll gain all the knowledge, and eventually I'll get a job. So no one really thought that starting up or being an entrepreneur can also be an option. Entrepreneurship or business was linked to business families, where someone would be coming from that background. They would have a family business, and you know, okay, this kid will probably join his father in their family and take the reins forward from them. So
that narrative has changed meaningfully, right, over the years since you started. I guess since the age of 16, that narrative has changed dramatically, right? And I'm sure you've also seen that evolve and grow with time, and sort of people moving away from that bracket of family-run businesses and sort of stepping into the void that, aging parents or aging promoters leave back. Things have changed now, right? Like, people go to different lines, people start from scratch as well, if you will. And for me, entrepreneurship, more comes from starting something from scratch kind of a mindset. Is that fair?
Absolutely. So, what I felt as an entrepreneur, the first key thing is, if you want to be called an entrepreneur, you want to be a first definition guy who should be starting things from scratch, as you mentioned. And that thinking didn't exist back then. So I think by the time I turned 21, which was almost 5 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I saw a slight shift happening. Yeah, people were becoming open to this whole idea of being independent. But I think a major shift happened post 2008 crisis, especially in the US, where US saw a sudden surge in startups and in entrepreneurs, right? And we saw most of the present generation unicorns being born in that era, right? So as US progressed, as more and more people started trying their hands on something new, as more money started flowing in that area, I think other countries and other cities also started accepting this as a new space. And the second key piece was access to information became easier, right? I think it was only around 2009, 2010, or rather 2011 when smartphones entered our lives, and when internet came on our fingertips. Right before that, internet was available, but you needed a proper computer for that, and the internet connectivity was limited, and the content and information which was available on the net was also very limited. Right, like we won't be consuming videos the way we consume it today. We won't have access to so much of media what we have now. Right, you wouldn't have like so many independent writers, so many independent bloggers or vloggers who would be sharing their journey. So I think a lot changed post 2010-11 when internet started becoming more open. And I think that was also a time when advanced versions of iPhone came in. 2010-11 is also, I think, the time when Android launched its first smartphone, and I think a light started changing from that very point. So 2012, I remember I became part of this really cool group called Startup Weekend. I don't know how much you guys have heard about that, but it was a very cool concept, originated out of Colorado. This organization was being managed from Seattle, where they would gather a bunch of strangers in a city who were aspiring entrepreneurs or who would be sitting with a bunch of business ideas. They would give them a platform to pitch those ideas, and 2.5 days later, you'll have your validation report, whether that idea would work or not, whether it's worth converting that idea into a startup or not. So we used to do it over the weekend, hence we used to call it Startup Weekend. So I saw 2012 is when I became a part of this movement, and there was a sudden surge in people wanting to develop apps back then, right? And we would wonder that how many apps would exist, and why is everyone wanting to launch a mobile application? So I remember having a conversation with the managing director of Google India back in those days, and we said, Yatin, you know what? Apps will become the world for us. You'll probably not go on a website, but you would need an app to do anything in your life or anything in your daily routine. And again, as we progress, 2012, 2013, 2014, you saw like Uber becoming so popular. You saw Airbnb getting so popular. Obviously, all of the social media guys, they were the first ones to launch their app versions. And I think 2020, we hardly see any website, right? Like everything is somewhere app-driven.
But yeah, Yatin, like it's pretty interesting, like when we kind of, go through the like rise of digitization and social media, in terms of content, in terms of distribution, in terms of just like looking at, how people are accessing technology and how that has kind of changed the overall startup environment. But like when you kind of took over, when you started coworking, at the end of the day, coworking, as I understand as an outsider, is a traditional business, right? In the sense that it's I won't say it's a brick and mortar business, it's an operations heavy business, but it is more like it is leveraging on the problem which comes out of the startup ecosystem being evolved, in the sense that, people suddenly do not feel like, they need to actually work in big dedicated individual offices. People want to work in shared spaces where there are opportunities to network, where there are opportunities to get support. So how did you come across starting that, in the sense that it's not a pure play tech product, right? Co-working, but it is something which kind of comes from the technological evolution of things.
So, to answer you straightforward, I would say no, that's not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a real estate company, and it's not a very traditional business.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we progressed, as we saw more and more entrepreneurs venturing out, one of my key learnings as an entrepreneur was that for you to succeed as an entrepreneur, for you to succeed with your startup, you needed like-minded people to guide you, to support you, and to work with you. And somewhere that did not exist back in the days, right? Like if you were starting up, your journey was very, very lonely. So in 2011, I came across this concept. I started reading about it. Someone told me that, these co-working spaces exist. And these co-working spaces are nothing but just open spaces where you can go, you can work with like-minded people, and you can share different ideas, and you have like a space which is like a common facility which services everyone. I was like, okay, that sounds good, but the core ethos behind a co-working space was the community and the whole communal thinking. And by communal thinking, I mean how everyone thinks of each other together rather than thinking about themselves. So that was the model, and it was very focused on early stage entrepreneurs and freelancers who were experimenting or who were kind of independent in their work lives. Their usual schedule was either they were working from home back then, or they were working out of a coffee shop. But in either case, they wouldn't have interaction with the external world, right? They wouldn't have any employee or any person to talk to validate their business ideas or their thoughts. And that's where these co-working spaces were making a difference, where these were not large spaces. They were smaller spaces attracting 20, 30 people together. These 20, 30 people were individuals who would be working on their respective ideas or projects, but they would come together every day to work out of a common table. That was the initial concept. So that's when I was made familiarized with this concept. And I was fortunate to find a space like this in Delhi, where there was a Brit guy who had just opened a co-working space with a co-living space in South Delhi, and it was about 5 minutes away from my space. So I was doing random Google search, and I found out about it. So I went there, and I was very keen to subscribe to the space. Model was clear that if you wanted to pick up a desk, you've got to pay $100 a month. Dollar was about 60 rupees back then. So I was like, okay, but maybe I don't have that spare 6,000 rupees a month to afford an office space. So he said, if you still want to be a part of our community, come every Friday. Our space is open to public. So we do open meetups, and you can participate in that. I found that entire concept and feeling very powerful, right? So I would look forward to the Friday of every week to be able to go to the space and work out of there. So I went there, and I worked out of that space a few times, and I did find a bunch of cool people working out of the space. As time passed, it turned out that unfortunately his outreach in Delhi was very low. Hence, he could attract very less amount of people. There were little blogs written about it, not much of information. If you searched about a co-working space, that was the only space which would pop up on your Google search results, but no one knew about it. So, towards the end of 2011, he and I signed up a pact, and he got me on board as a co-founder and director to take over the reins of his co-working space, and that's the point from where I started the journey of my co-working spaces. So it was a co-working, co-living space with only 20 seats. which we used to run along with a common area, which was a massive lounge, which allowed you to host different sort of meetups. I think over a period of time, what happened, everyone realized the power of these spaces because these were plug-and-play setups, and these 20 people whom we fostered at the space actually started, or like the people who would use these 20 seats, right? Those people actually ended up launching their own companies around the country. So I ran the space for about 3.5 years as a single standalone space with 20 seats. And at the end of 3.5 years, we realized we have serviced about 500 co-workers out of these 20 seats, which was an impactful project, right? Like if you ask me, out of 20 seats, if 500 people could be impacted, I was like, wow, we have made some change in their lives. And a lot of people started coming to us and started saying, hey, Yatin, I started out of a seat at your space. Today I have a team of 4 or 5 people. If I occupy 5 seats out of 20, you may not be able to service your customers. So we want to change it, and we want to provide me a dedicated space. And that gave us the idea of a co-working 2.0, the way I like to put it. And that's when we decided that we'll focus on building slightly larger spaces, which would allow more private space to teams, primarily for people who started out of our space. And there'll be open seats from where anyone who's at the early stage of their journey, they can come and use subspaces. So you work out of co-working, you would have noticed how the spaces are designed. We will always have 30, 40 open seats, which act as a public area. And then we have private offices for teams like yours, where you have like more structured environment, or you know that you need some serious work environment, especially for your team to work more efficiently. So that's been our journey with CoworkIn. But fundamentally, it's very community-focused organization and a community-focused feeling, which we have tried to still retain as much as we can. Over a period of time, obviously, the scale of these spaces kept increasing, and what you get to hear from other players is a much larger play, because more and more people started accepting these spaces, and it went beyond startups and medium-level enterprises. It started going towards even larger corporations. So the space need increased, and we are getting to see more and more real estate developers getting into this area, because they have identified co-working as an independent asset class in the real estate industry.
But like Yatin, I mean, one thing that I just wanted to kind of get your sense on is, like in the beginning, like when you were talking about co-working, you kind of were very explicit in saying that we are not a real estate company. But I guess, I mean, from that, what you meant probably was that you don't really, you don't own the spaces. You probably, you're an operator, correct? Is that what you meant? I mean, in the sense that, I mean, like your biggest, I think, the model, if you look at like the business model of co-working, if I understand it correctly, is it that you guys have kind of, in a way, developed very, high quality standardized operational standards for converting a piece of real estate on behalf of a developer or a landlord into a co-working space, making sure that utilization is good, and having some sort of a rev share, arrangement, and where you yourself stay asset light. Is my basic understanding correct?
No, Nikhil, I would say that fundamentally the core of co-working is a community-driven organization, right? And what it does is it builds a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, or like-minded people who want to come and see each other together. How do you do that is where products come into play. And when products come into play, you have a business model behind that. I would like to break it in that manner. So it's a community organization servicing the needs of its community members, which translates into office spaces. And to build those office spaces, you need some sort of a real estate or some sort of a model,
right,
which we have built over the period of time.
Right.
Right. So right now what I am explaining to you about co-working and co-working is more the fundamental thought process behind it. That what it was, where it is, and how it evolved. But the core philosophy remains the same. That's a very community-driven organization. Right? Even you would see, like for us, we give a lot of preference to early stage companies, and there's a reason behind that, right? It's a risky target group, right? Because you don't know how many of them will succeed. You know 75-80% of them will fail, but you still decide to support them vis-a-vis working with larger corporations, like at least for us at CoworkIn, that's what we do. But the reason is we know that these people, those 30% who succeed or 20% who succeed, they are the game changers. They are the trendsetters, and they build industries. And I can quote it from our own examples. I don't know how much you guys are aware of the fact that Moonlighting, which was my first co-working, co-living space, that was the starting point for Oyo Rooms as well as for Urban Snap, right? So today, I don't have to justify the impact anymore because we were very founder-first focused organization. We gave them the space and we gave them the platform to come and work together and see what they have done. So
right. So from the perspective of obviously from the perspective of product proposition, positioning, the filters you guys put, that I kind of understand. And in terms of actually if you kind of translate it from a product perspective, besides the real estate or the functional requirement of these early stage companies, what are the other sorts of things that you guys spend a lot of time working on?
Yeah, so that brings me to my other organization, which is Gen Global Entrepreneurship Network. Right. So what happened for us was what we realized that one key essential piece in servicing an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur's need was the space. Right, because you need a physical space for them to be able to come and access and to see you. Right. And you also figure out a way to service them. Now, and that's a very important point. That's a very important starting point for an entrepreneur. Right, like if you are able to be at an independent space, which is affordable and accessible, that's a big value add.
Right.
Once you enter, then the second key thing happens that whatever you are working on, you need support with your businesses, which can be anything, right? You might be a media agency, you might require a tech firm to build your platform, you might require other sort of service providers to service your needs, you might require some sort of an HR firm to help you with recruiting good talent for you. It can be anything, right? So what we did, we started building we started curating complementary service providers together. So we know that, okay, if it's one space, it needs to have these kind of service providers so that everyone can complement each other and it builds a healthy environment.
Right.
That third phase, so when you do that, it's very important for you to curate these service providers correctly. And you got to curate you got to make sure that the founders are coming with the right set of ethos, right? Because you build your own teams and you don't have control over your teams, but you need the right set of founders to be able to access our spaces. So to do that, we figured out how essential networking was and how essential right kind of events and activities were for you to curate a community, what you are envisioning to curate. So as I progressed with my journey as a co-working company, as a startup weekend organizer, over a period of time we realized that we got to strengthen the network of entrepreneurs who have operated out of our spaces or will potentially operate out of our spaces or will potentially build something in India. So as part of that, I was fortunate to become a part of a global network called Global Entrepreneurship Network. The name speaks for itself that it is a network of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship builders like myself who work day in and day out to service the needs of any entrepreneur. So from providing you access to space, to access to money, access to market, access to talent, access to knowledge, That's what is very, very key for any entrepreneur and any entrepreneurship support organization who's trying to service this particular segment. So I found this was all very unorganized, very loose. There were people existing in all parts of the city, in all parts of the country, and today I can say in all parts of the world. The challenges were similar, but they didn't know how to connect with each other and how to service each other, and that's where we have built a beautiful open non-profit network called GEN, which allows all entrepreneurs to access resources and get connected to a larger network of people who can potentially support them with their entrepreneurial journeys. And now it has become so powerful and so strong that all the governments around the world, all the state governments work closely with this network to gain knowledge, insights, and access to entrepreneurs.
Right. Super interesting. Yatin, just hold on. I think we lost Sharad. Okay. We are still rolling. Huh?
Okay.
Let me patch him back in. Yeah. Sharad?
Yeah.
Yeah, Yatin Sharad is back.
Yeah.
So, like speaking from Jen's perspective now, and I'll kind of, obviously, we have kind of talked about the evolution of the startup ecosystem in India, how it kind of gone from, leaps and bounds, how it kind of started probably with a lot of cynicism in a particular generation, but over time now, it obviously has much more mainstream acceptance, as well as I think there's much more support out there, right? Thanks to guys like you. Now, in the middle of that, obviously, something like COVID-19 happens, right? And that kind of is also aligned with the fact that the ecosystem in India, I mean, we can obviously talk about specific companies. And this is something that, me and Sharad have spoken about a lot, that there are obviously a lot of companies who raised a lot of capital, but they are not being able to, kind of have a viable business model, or, cases where unit economics after many years is still not in the green, or, we kind of keep on hearing, obviously, stories within India, outside India, be it SoftBank, be it, Uber IPO and things like that, where a lot of money, a lot of private capital went in, but being risk capital by definition, some structural issues also came in, and that did not include the Indian startup ecosystem as well. So obviously, that kind of I would say a bit of realism or pragmatism has hit the space in the last 2.5 years. And with that, now we are kind of going through a pandemic, an outbreak, which has affected even the biggest businesses on the street. Be it blue chip stocks, be it, big family offices. So as a startup ecosystem builder, what's your first reading of the impact of the pandemic?
And just to add to that as well, Yatin, because we, when we started talking about startup ecosystem, we went back to, what happened in 2008 and sort of even the dot-com bubble in 92, right? Even those sort of, different kind of recessionary narratives, but they also had their own say in the startup ecosystem. Then there were a lot of those companies which sort of didn't make it. Some of them had massive changes. It generally comes with some kind of changes, and there is a heightened, elevated focus on risk and mitigating strategies. That's sort of what Nikhil was alluding to. So in that, it always comes with that. So we're just trying to see what do you think your views are this time?
So it's a very interesting question, right? And I've been introspecting on this myself as well. I feel I'm looking at this pandemic from a very positive lens. Okay. Where I feel it came and it forced us to stop, right? If you notice, like for us on a daily basis, life was becoming very, very hectic, very stressful, and a lot of us became a part of certain bubbles which just kept expanding, right? And we knew that somewhere they were bound to explode, because anything, if you inflate too much air into anything, that it does explode. Explosions have happened in different forms earlier, right, where it will be primarily economic explosions because of certain inflationary values, if I can put it that way. So the 98, 99 dot-com bubble was like that, 2008 financial depression was like that, We also saw a slight slump around 2015, 2016. And now, at this point of time, we have been trying to figure out what to do. And we know we were approaching another economic depression around the world. It was becoming visible, but no one really thought what's going to be the impact. Like everyone was waiting for it. And then in between, this pandemic happened, which kind of changed everything. And I think it has broken all the world records till the 1924 Great Depression. So what has happened positively out of this whole scenario is that one, it forced the world to stop. I don't think we have seen that ever before. I think the last time, if I remember correctly, the world stopped on 9/11, right? Which was a great shocker for most of us. I think most of us were in high school at that point, including you guys. I guess. Right? But we saw, yes, that there was a shocker. Because there was something totally unexpected which happened, and that changed a lot of things around the world. Today, this pandemic is going to change the create, which will be of a similar manner, where how you approach things, how you look at things, how you function will completely change. Which I feel, if you personally ask me, it was required, because I think somewhere we had to stop. We had to put breaks to evaluate as to what we were doing. But I think mostly that evaluation happens at an individual level, where you will saturate, you will burn out, and you'll say, okay, let me take a stop, let me evaluate, and then restart my journey. But it should always happen at an individual level. Today it's happening for everyone, for all the 600 million people residing on this planet. The second key thing is I feel that while we all have been forced to be locked up in our respective houses, somewhere I feel it has brought a lot of us together, right? It has brought a lot of us together as industries, as individuals, as even as friends. You know, like everyone is now fighting this crisis together. So, and all the impact which it is creating, everyone is very focused that we'll fight it out and we'll do it together. It's like no government can fight it alone. No individual organization can fight it alone. It doesn't matter how rich you were. Today, no money, no power can let you escape this pandemic. So everyone has realized that, okay, we all are at par with each other. We all are back to the basics. We all are talking about our survival. Right? Survival of ourselves and survival of our careers and our businesses. So I feel this is very interesting, because it was unexpected, but out of this unexpected times, how unintentionally we all have come together. We are not realizing that, and we all are standing by each other.
You know, like
that's fascinating. Yeah.
No, Yatin, but I mean, if you kind of, as a, one is to kind of look at this more as a, from a very human perspective, in terms of how this kind of brings some level of unity or alignment amongst people, and how it kind of, is, it might be a cliche, but how it's like a reset button, right? Which has helped give a lot of perspective to individuals. But I'm like from a business perspective, like for instance, the government came up with fiscal package, then the RBI came up with kind of a monetary or financial package. Right, liquidity is a big issue. Liquidity is affecting, even big listed companies, be it through commercial paper disappearing, be it through short-term lending not coming up. Moratoriums have been given at the retail level, right? So in that, like obviously there are a lot of models of startups, right? There are startup models which are capital intensive. There are startup models which are capital light. There are models which have a big fixed cost base. There are models which are mainly variable cost base, and then if you look at there are venture debt enabled models. Do you see survivors? Like, do you see models which you think might work better? Like, because if you look at me, like me and Sharad, we obviously dabble in the stock markets, right? Right now, people are looking at investors, especially, are looking at companies more like a lender rather than like an equity investor, because the demand has disappeared. right? So, which is an unprecedented activity. So if a demand disappears, what you look at is you look at, okay, what are the interest obligations? How much debt does this company have? How much of a fixed cost base does this company have? How much cash it has on its balance sheet, right? And I think if one is looking at companies on the stock markets in such a way, I won't be very surprised if people start looking at companies in the startup ecosystem fairly or unfairly in the same way, right? So, and there was obviously a mindset that there'll be a lot of private capital, then companies would get IPO'd and, entrepreneurs will get exits. But now that perspective is changing into that, IPOs are now some distance away. An exit might be a bigger fish consolidating you, right? So, like an M&A exit becomes a more viable thing than an IPO exit. So, what is your take on those potential trends which may come out from a market standpoint or a competitive dynamic standpoint within the startup ecosystem in India?
So my take on this is slightly different. I think, as I said, we are back to the basics. But what today we are trying to do is we are trying to streamline the value chain, right? Today, this pandemic has taught us one thing, that guys, you've got to think about everyone together. Don't be self-centered. Okay. And that is very true for any business. Today, any business, any economic activity has a value chain, and we all are a key part of that value chain. If anyone breaks that value chain, or if anyone does any correction in that value chain, it has a ripple effect on each of us, right? So that's what government is trying to understand, and that's what all of us as individuals, as entrepreneurs are also trying to understand. Now, what I feel is when things normalize, this correction was required when the value chain works on a fair model, and there is everyone is running, but in a certain manner. Unfortunately, as the capital markets explode, as organizations explode, as startups have heavy valuation, this gap in the value chain keeps increasing, and money starts getting centered around a few individual groups or corporations or lending houses or whatever, right? Like there are only few people who are trying to control the entire value chain. With this pandemic, the value chain is becoming more even. That's what I feel. And as a result of that, anyone who plays a key role in this value chain in any way doesn't have to worry, right? Because whatever you do, your basic consumption will not go down. We know that. There is an opportunity that now there's more need for newer services. And that's a very positive, it's a very, very positive news for the tech sector, right? Because a lot of things can only be enabled using tech, right? Today we are talking about contactless delivery. Today we are talking about better hygiene, sanitation standards. Today we are talking about better data to equip us about our surroundings, about how movement is happening, how movement of people is happening, how movement of goods is happening, right? So I see all of these things having a very major positive impact post-COVID. Because yes, we are made to think in a different manner. But when any crisis happens, when the explosion happens, all disruptions and innovative ideas also come post that explosion. All of pressures or depressions which we saw, at least in our lifetime, we have seen we came out of it even much stronger. Right, if 98 explosion happened, from 98 to 2008, the markets went above the roof, right? And from 2008 till 2012 or 15, the way we progressed was even crazier, right? Like the valuations, the kind of money, the kind of innovations, disruptions which happened. It was unimaginable, right? So I think this is got to be revolutionary in many ways. Now, it all depends on how each of us look at these situations and what kind of disruptions do we become a part of.
But like when you mentioned tech, like that's a very interesting point. That obviously, the value of tech is pretty evident during the lockdown, and but that can mean two things. One is that obviously within tech you have big tech, you have small tech, you have medium-sized tech, you have tech companies which have a lot of cash, which have a high amount of survivorship in such circumstances, they end up, surviving and acquiring the smaller tech. That is one version of stories. And the other version of story is that, it doesn't matter if you're an innovative enough model, you stick around. So it's pretty interesting. But I mean, to kind of bring this conversation to close, what would be your wish list? I mean, I know like you obviously have a very, you kind of are looking at things from a glass half full perspective. You have a positive outlook towards things, which is great to hear. But like if I was to ask you that, what would be your wish list as an entrepreneur from, say, policymakers in the next 1 to 2 months? What would that be?
I think my wish list would be that they make everything more inclusive and more supportive. And I think somewhere the policymakers are also understanding that, right? They were in this dilemma of how do we streamline things, how do we support more people, how do we include everyone, right? Today, policymakers' perspective is very different because their checks and balances are very different. Like they have to see the capital market, they see the large cap industries because they feel that the large cap industries support the small and the medium industries. So if we support the large cap, or the larger industries, automatically the value chain gets supported. And then yes, probably the value chain doesn't trickle down to the last segment of the society. So let us support them also, and let us uplift them in some way or the other. And you'll see that so far all the economic and financial stimulus packages which have come in, or when we talk to the policymakers, that's how they were thinking. But today, when the disruption has happened across segments, what I can say is today even the government is forced to think differently. And today the government is also forced to think about everyone all across. And what I see is it won't matter whether you are a large company or a smaller company. If you are doing something good, if you are solving a problem, a key problem, your future prospects are very high and you will definitely grow up the ladder. So I feel that the next set of disruptions won't come from the larger companies or larger tech companies, which will come from the small and medium tech companies who would make it large. Zoom being the biggest example, right? We saw how Zoom stock also surged. Amazon, right? Like unbelievable, primarily because of the value of e-com all of a sudden. We knew e-com was disrupting, right? But it will reach this level. Who knew, right? And I think the biggest wealth creation is done by Jeff Bezos in these crises, or by founder of Zoom. So there will be things which will come up. And as I said, like ultimately Facebook was also born primarily post-recession, right? Like they started in 2006 or something. But they grew, the valuation significantly increased post 2008-9. So we will get to see more revolutionary ideas, and that's what I also wish to see in future, that how these disruptions will happen. I see more of equality around the world post COVID. I see everyone being more sensible and empathetic towards each other. So I expect more support and more disruptive solutions which will ease our life than make our life difficult.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And every industry and sort of every kind of, be it small cap, large cap, or be it tech, or be it pharma, whatever, they all sort of heavily reliant right now on some kind of policy or some kind of initiative from policymakers in terms of de-stressing the situation. So it's interesting to hear your take as well.
And policymakers are exactly talking about these things, right? Like if you realize, last almost 45 days, like almost a month, we have been under a lockout, right? If I consider 15, 16 March as the starting time of the lockdown. Since then, you have noticed, like, our financial services are running absolutely fine, right? There is even more focus on tech in the finance sector. So fintech is definitely growing, right? What I see this also as an opportunity is that your credit facilities will also become more seamless and paperless. They will all be digital.
Yeah,
I think that's waiting for that point, right?
Yeah, no, I think, the common sort of narrative, like the kind of speed at which we were moving towards sort of digital money and moving towards like more tech incorporated solutions, it's just going to get accelerated because now people are forced into adopting such measures by some external factor, an unfortunate one albeit. So that's sort of, hear you loud and clear. And that's sort of, I think we also believe that there will be an accelerated period of growth for a lot of these tech companies or sort of people tackling problems like this. So yeah, we'll wait and see. But it was fascinating to hear your take, Yatin. I mean, thank you so much for your time. I think we're nearing about an hour now. And it was great to hear your journey. And you're like Nikhil started off by saying you've got front row seats into the world of Indian startup ecosystem, and both from an entrepreneur standpoint and just as an enthusiast as well. So it's obviously good to have folks like you on our podcast and get your thoughts. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm really hoping that the Indian entrepreneurs are a part of this disruption, and they definitely work towards solving some of the larger problems. They look at it as an opportunity to be the change makers for the whole world.
You are one of the most positive speakers we have had on our podcast, Yatin. Which is great, huh? Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. And with that, I think it kind of brings us to the end of this episode. And we'll be back soon with a new guest. And obviously, big shout out to Yatin for taking the time here. And thank you, guys. So this is Nikhil Arora, and I have with me Sharat Chopran, and we are signing off.